A live welcome from above and Batman Beyond. I am your co-host, Benjamin David. We are live on our YouTube channel. How's everybody doing? Happy Sunday. Today we're hitting the beyond exciting news of a new Batman animated series called Batman Caped Crusader. We'll get into all the details in just a minute, but before we do that, I first wanted to issue a bit of a correction on the news. If you subscribe to our podcast, you might have heard our last episode, which actually has since been taken down. So this is me apologizing and correcting something we said on that episode. And it's that Caped Crusader is definitely not tied into the continuity of the DCAU, Batman the Animated Series and Batman Beyond. That assumption is not necessarily true, meaning there could in fact be ties to the DCAU, and I apologize for making that assumption. As I posted to our Instagram, this is what we get for not reading the full press release and believing everything you hear on other podcasts. But please continue listening to ours. In my defense, the podcast I base that assumption on, not naming names, is usually a very credible and legitimate source for DC news. Maybe I just misinterpreted what they were saying. I don't know. So I thought it was safe to go by that source without doing my press release homework. So lesson learned, never go by other journalists' interpretations of a press release. Press releases are there for a reason. So there's my correction. Sorry again about the confusion. And we promise to be better journalists in the future. So with that out of the way, let's get back to Caped Crusader. The audio from this will be on our Above and Batman Beyond podcast. Please subscribe to the pod if you don't already. We're on Apple, Spotify, and SoundCloud. And for the podcast listeners, don't forget about our Above and Batman Beyond YouTube channel here, where we spend most of our time these days. So please consider subscribing there as well, so you don't miss our vids. So again, today we're covering the massive news of Batman Caped Crusader, the newly announced series from what THR is calling the three powerhouse directors, perfect name, of Matt Reeves, JJ Abrams, and the Godfather of DCAU and beyond, Bruce Timm. Caped Crusader is being produced by HBO MAX and Cartoon Network. That's who ordered the series, straight to series order. Still unclear where exactly the series will air, whether it will be HBO MAX or Cartoon Network, but that much we do know. Since our show here is animated Bat focused, let alone Bruce Timm's involvement here, I think it goes without saying we'll be covering Caped Crusader endlessly. So please be sure to stay tuned for more on the upcoming series here on the channel. Plus, we have our DC animated movie show here in the channel as well. So who knows, we may just get some movies out of this animated Batverse. Can't wait to see what it looks like. If you don't already, please follow us on Instagram. We are at Batman Beyond Media, where you can find plenty of Beyond coverage. And finally, please subscribe to our DC animated movie show here in the channel that I just mentioned. Again, that's our YouTube series and podcast for the prestigious ongoing catalog of DC animated movies. If you're a fan of my co-host Eli Benson, and let's be honest, who isn't? Mr. Benson is going to join me for the next review on the show, covering the 2020 DC Showcase short Phantom Stranger, also directed by Bruce Timm and very much in the DCAU animation style. After my recent review of the short Commandy Last Boy on Earth, I thought it'd be fun to start reviewing more of the Showcase shorts. So we're going to have kind of a series here in the channel for that. So stay tuned for a review of Phantom Stranger, as well as my recent coverage of the newest DC animated movie, Justice Society World War II. If you haven't seen either of those, Commandy or JS World War II, Commandy was included with that movie, so they come together. Again, the DC Animated Movie Show is a series right here in the YouTube channel, and please subscribe to the podcast of the same name. You can find that show on Apple, Spotify, and wherever you listen to podcasts. All right, all you sorry guys. I just X'd myself out there. All right, all you animated Gothamites, let's talk Batman Caped Crusader. The beauty of going live, right? Just embarrassing yourself in front of the entire internet. All right, so let's do it, guys. I cannot believe this news. I mean, I'm just absolutely beside myself. All right, for those of you joining us here on YouTube, please comment below with your thoughts on Batman Caped Crusader. So the press release that broke all this news was on May 19th. So I want to start off with a quote from JJ Abrams in this, because again, we have the three powerhouse directors, Matt Reeves, JJ Abrams, and Bruce Timm. So this one's from JJ and Matt Reeves. So we are beyond excited to be working together to bring this character back to tell engrossing new stories in Gotham City, said Abrams. Oh my God. The series, this is Abrams continue. The series will be a thrilling, cinematic, and evocative of Batman's noir roots while delving deeper into the psychology of these iconic characters. We cannot wait to share this new world. Oh my God. So again, there's enough in there that could be, to the dismay of our last podcast, there could be some openings there for connection to the DCAM, and we will talk about that. What excites me most about this specific quote, and actually, I just came up with this live here on YouTube, the beauty of going live, the good beauty of going live. Matt Reeves said in his interpretation of the Batman, he wants to tie in, I should say, in his comic interpretations through the Batman, he wants to bring in Batman ego. In my notes here, the word psychology, right? I mean, they flat out said, both Abrams and Matt Reeves here, series of a thriller, well, delving deeper into the psychology of these iconic characters. You can't get a deeper delve into the psychology of Batman than Batman Ego. That's by Darwin Cook. It's one of my favorite Batman books of all time, favorite Batman comics of all time. Would be a perfect, speaking of adaptation, speaking of our DC animated movie show, Batman Ego is always at the top of my list for a Batman animated movie. Because Reeves has said that's his influence for the Batman, I wonder how much of that's going to come into this. Ego, if you've never read it, is like a Batman acid trip of the character himself kind of reflecting and having this like deeply existential, psychological, almost break, but it's hallucinatory and everything's big and exaggerated and perfect for animation. But it's also really, it's not just like crazy and weird and psychedelic. It's this beautiful, very Batman, just very well told story. So I wonder how much of Ego is going to be in this, especially because Ego is, as Darwin Cook is, kind of an old school, mid-century, his style was Silver Age, even though he was a modern artist and stuff. This looks like it's going to be 30s, 40s, Golden Age Batman, but still vintage Batman, who knows? So those are that's the Matt Reeves and JJ thing. To kind of pause real quick on the press release itself, I just want to give my thoughts on this whole project, my reaction to these news. Like, immediately, it was almost relief, because this is just everything so many of us have wanted from Batman animation, from Batman movies. It's the relief we all felt when Matt Reeves did this extended interview / presentation thing, that keynote style thing that he did at DC Fandom, talking about the Batman, when he's just going on and on about Detective Noir. And I think that's actually where he decided to break the news about the Batman Ego influence, was live at Fandom. So much of just, and this will bring me into the JJ. JJ is perfect for this, for just this, which is doing your franchise homework. I mean, that's what this guy does best. He'll take Star Wars, he'll take Star Trek, and whether you kind of like his interpretations or not, you do have to admit that, like, he's really good at taking what we love, what we know, what makes us nostalgic of franchises, old franchises in particular, and bringing them back. When I say that the relief of many Bat fans, it's just doing your franchise homework on the character. For the past 20, 30 years, we've been getting other things beside. What is this character? He comes from books, pulp comics specifically, kind of detective pulp, noir comics. He's a detective. He wears a fucking bat suit. He fights crime. Like, that's the character. Parents got killed, avenging their death through crime fighting. Past 20, 30 years, we've gotten versions of that, but kind of like these other takes, right? It's what if, or before, or just kind of like, we know what the Schumacher projects were doing. I mean, he just flat out was like, I was there to entertain, right? So, but they weren't even closely based, as we all know, to the comics or to the, he admitted to pretty much bringing 66 into the 90s. So it was just this 3-time remove, many things seriously related to the character itself. Tim Burton, as always, is an author. He's a master, but he does whatever he wants. And sure, Warner's was up his ass for both of those first movies, but those are weird. Like, there's Batman qualities to them. So you see what I'm getting at here. And then into Nolan, it's like very real. Everything has to be real. Does it? This, I think, is going to it is. They're saying it's going to honor the OG roots of this character. And I think that's the relief that many of us have felt, and probably the excitement that so many of us feel as well for this project. Now, this is my other thought. If this does deliver on what they're saying it is, this is going to be hyperbolic here. But this, honestly, since Batman the Animated Series, might be the best thing for the history of the character. Batman the Animated Series, as everyone says, it said in one of the press releases here, among all the press covering this is like Batman the Animated Series was the gold standard. It's considered widely among Bat fans, animation fans, whatever, comics fans to be the gold standard, right? So for Batman interpretation, if they, and we'll get to some quotes here of Sam Register, he flat out says it is in that spirit that they're bringing this back. I think because that series 30 years ago, going on 30 years ago, did such a job of, again, the history that the reason I know who this character is because of that show. The reason an entire generation of people know. I think this series might have the chance, not have the chance, but could do the same thing again if it is saying what they're saying. Which historically, like that, you have to say historically because again, that sounds hyperbolic, but you're talking 30 plus years of kind of strange interpretations, aside from the animation, of course. That's beside our niche, which is why our niche is what it is, which is our love for animation. Because frankly, the series and movies have been a lot better than the mainstream Batman stuff. Let's be real. I'll exclude Nolan from that criticism, but again, Nolan was doing something very different. This seems to be close to the character. But the market synergy, kind of hate to say that when it comes to stuff artistic and things that I love this much, but like, whatever, it's Batman. I don't really care. I'll say it. Market synergy for the character of Batman. You have a detective noir live action story, you know, exec produced and directed by the same dude who's exec producing this series, Matt Reeves. Looks like they're going noir, detective noir. They are going detective noir multimedia now. Eli, our co-host here, made a good point. You know, when we were recording last time about this, and he was like, that could bring about games, comics. Like, think about the good that that could do. I didn't even extrapolate all that, but my thought was just, I'm so excited for the market synergy of like how these are going to influence each other. The fact that like Warner's, I think that there is market synergy among multimedia wise. It's confidence in this version of Batman. And like, it's kind of a new age of Batman if these are what they're going to say that they're going to be. And that excites me to no end. I've just been, and even, I didn't even get into DCEU stuff. Like, you know, while Nolan was doing super real and before the character with Begins, now you're taking it with Batfleck, who's like at the end of his rope and he's killing people. And it's just extra interpretations. You guys get the point. But now we're kind of just back to the basics, and the basics of this character fucking rule. So I think we're good. So this is a quote from Sam Register, Sam Register is the president of DC Animation. He said, Batman the Animated Series, this is what I was saying before, it was a masterpiece that shaped the perception of the character for an entire generation of fans. It is in that spirit that we are bringing together three master storytellers in JJ, Matt, and Bruce, each with their own intuitive understanding and affection for the character, to create a new series that will continue the same groundbreaking legacy. So bringing back the DCAU stuff, that could mean, you know, that leaves open the possibility. He didn't bring up Batman the Animated Series for no reason. It's, you know, it could have just been because of Bruce Timm, but you don't know. If they are really using that as their standard, there could be some DCAU. And if you think about it once again, I mean, now we're talking Detective 27, early days of Batman, you know, his comic appearance, first appearance ever, 1939. You have, you know, that kind of Prohibition era, you know, early days of organized crime, the mob, whatever you want to call it. And, or I should say early days of Batman fighting organized crime and the mob, Prohibition era mob. Does that mean that in the continuity of DCAU, and shout out to the DCAU Watchtower here in YouTube, the Watchtower database, James Strecker did a video on just this, and he was saying, like, I don't want to quote him and try to remember exactly what he said, but he was mentioning where it could fall in the timeline. You know, Watchtower database is all about their timelines over there in the DCAU timelines, where things fall in the timeline since it is one universe. So he was guessing there. So check out Watchtower database if you want to kind of brainstorm where this could fall. But obviously, if it's early Batman, it would, I think James said, it would be between the events of Mask of the Phantasm, which is, of course, where we see his Batman Begins-esque year one type DCAU origins. It would be between then and the series that 1992 Batman the Animated Series. So Yeah, man. Oh my God. The thought that like that same Batman could be this guy, like the flared out ears, and we're going to get to the image in this in a second. This will bring us to the image. The flared out Detective 27, 1939 ears, super long. Also the cape swoop, that's kind of an indication this might be animated series. The moon behind him, although again that stuff is very Batman noir, but these again could all be the DCAU indicators. By the poster release, along with the press release, of course, by Bruce Timm himself. The font is also very, I mean, to the T, Deco, Art Deco, 40s Art Deco, late 30s, 40s Art Deco. Looks very old New York, very kind of Chrysler Building-esque. You know what Art Deco is. If you don't Google the shit out of it, and it's exactly what was the aesthetic for Batman the Animated Series, of course. They even brought it into New Adventures. So I'm hoping that, you know, that might be, or not hoping, I should say, I'm guessing that might be one of the, if they are signaling to us this is in the DCAU, that font might just be it. But if it's not, it definitely indicates period, I think. If not at the very least, stylistic period, meaning like it's definitely in the style of Art Deco, and this whole thing will take place in a 30s, 40s, even if it is anachronistic the way animated series was. Like you don't know what kind of in any time. It's definitely like Art Deco as shit. All right, so yeah, again, I guess I pretty much just covered the teaser poster that was released along with the press release from HBO MAX and Cartoon Network, done by Bruce Timm. Looks, again, very Detective 27. He's got the long, flared out ears, similar to the Soul of the Dragon. If you've seen that animated movie, we covered it on the DC Animated Movie Show, but Bruce Timm was the exec producer on that and was very much involved in the design of that character. He said that it was, and you can tell right away, again, the flared out long ears, kind of inspired by this artist Phil Cho, who Phil Cho brought back. I believe his name is Phil Cho, but in the New 52 for sure, there was a bit of a revival for a short time of the Detective 27, again, kind of flared out long ears. So again, like, is this going to be Batman early in his career or just early Batman comics inspired? Oh my God, I'm just so excited to see what it means. So this is, and now this will bring us into what Eli was saying when we recorded before, like, no matter what Bruce Timm draws, it's from Eli. I think it's hilarious. Even Batman and Harley Quinn, like even the worst of the worst from Bruce Timm, knocks Eli on his fucking ass. That was his reaction to the poster, and I agree, man. I mean, he's just, this guy is, he is the way in which, like, Quentin Tarantino doesn't say he's a religious man, and follow me here. I promise I will tie this right back in, but he doesn't say he's a religious man, but he does believe in divine intervention insofar as the dialogue in Tarantino movies is so good that he doesn't know how he comes up with it. Literally, he said, this is from him. He said he just sits down at the keyboard and like it kind of just comes out. He doesn't know where it comes from. He thinks it's divine intervention, God intervening and saying, this is what you should say. I think Bruce Timm has the Tarantino intervention with art. I mean, the dude is just a vessel for the best fucking Batman art ever. He sits down and it turns into the best. So I agree, Eli. Eli also said JJ will bring a cinematic feel to the project. Totally agreed. I mean, again, this guy is the franchise master. He does his franchise homework better than anybody. So Eli, totally agreed. Oh, nice. We got someone here on YouTube, Trace Baker. Do you think he'll kill in the show like he did in the comics? At that time, or do you think it will be a more kid-friendly show? So great point. Thank you, Trace Baker. So early Batman, he was, again, a prohibition fighter, right? So alcohol was illegal, so organized crime just went through the roof in the kind of early, the 20s and 30s. And so there was a prohibition character. There were a lot of prohibition characters in pulp comics. I believe the Shadow was one of them, and you had characters who were fighting against this. It's kind of hard to fight mobsters by just beating them up and tying them up and scaring them. Realistically, back then, before we knew of the no-kill rule and all the things that developed into Batman, easiest way to get rid of gangsters is killing them. So Batman early on kind of had the Tommy gun and the trench coat. There's actually, when I was in Italy, fun story, when I was living over there, one of the comics that I picked up, I wanted to pick up like combine all the things I love, Batman and Italian shit. there was a comic called Ye Intouchables, and Ye Intouchables means the Untouchables, very much like the amazing movie from the 80s, I believe it was, with Kevin Costner. And then, of course, Robert De Niro plays Al Capone. So it was all about the Chicago mob and how they took down Al Capone, who was he's kind of the star of Prohibition gangsters, right? So, and check out Boardwalk Empire. You can see some more inside stuff on Al Capone with that. But like, yeah, he, killed those guys, right? So Trace Baker is saying early on the character was killing people. I don't think they're going to do that. I think that, sure, if you want to like literally interpret the character, sure, you could do that. But I think that would be better off as like a one-off movie to say, because it wasn't that long in the comics. Ask any kind of Bat historian. It was never for extended periods of time that the character was ever killing people. Like, yes, Batman has killed people throughout comics. Doesn't mean that any of those periods of time it was happening for that long. And it doesn't mean that like you can extrapolate from 80 plus years going like, he does kill. It's like he has killed. It doesn't mean does. Does implies more of the time than he does. So I don't want to get into the no kill rule. That was a great question. Your kind of second question about it, though, about it being more kid friendly. I wouldn't go by kid friendly. I would go by kid, let's call it approved, parents approved. But I think it's going to be as kid friendly as maybe I think it's going to be, I heard someone on a podcast say it perfectly, PG-13, right? So I think it's going to be more than what we got on the animated series. The animated series, they had Batman, the animated series, and beyond. They had a lot of, 90s, 2000s, what's the name of the NBA, whatever the the groups that the censorship companies, whoever the hell that is, not the FCC, but you know what I'm talking about. They would come in, SMP, standard market practice, whatever the hell. So these are the people who come in and censor, and they had to answer to those people, marketing things to kids. They're marketing toys. They're limited in a lot of ways, which also speaks to how well done those shows were. That yes, while they were kid friendly, while they were answering to the mandates and following those directions. I mean, a lot of times they went off the reservation, did whatever they wanted, but like, yeah, for the most part, that show was kid friendly. But I think because this is years later, the possibility with HBO Max and just our expectations now, I think with Matt Reeves, JJ, and Bruce Timm, I'm thinking PG-13. I'm hoping, and I'm not thinking at all they're going to do anything R-rated like they're doing with a lot of the animated movies recently. I'm thinking PG-13. So, this is our boy Z. What up, man? I think there will be no killing because they'll try to stay true to the current opinions of who Batman is and what he does. Agreed. And he will also be a Cartoon Network show. That's a great point, right? So in terms of distribution here, it's not just going on HBO Max. I mean, it's unclear exactly where it will air. We know it's produced by both companies, though. So the assumption is it will at least air on both. Whether it's airing first on one or the other, doesn't matter. That's a good point. It's probably going to be like, even if they do an Adult Swim type approach, I don't think it's going to be like R-rated Adult Swim. Trace Baker. So do you like BTAS? So like BTAS kind of rating where it can still be dark, but still be approved for kids. Perfect. That's exactly what I wanted to say. The dark detective, the noir, not feeling like you have to fill every moment with, fart noises and stupid noises and all the stuff that kind of like plagues much of animation, especially back then. But, even regular TV now, I think there's way too much of that going on. And, none of that was going on with the animated series. Like maybe a little to serve. I can't think of any episodes really. I mean, besides like, there's certainly throwaway episodes, but yeah, I think again, still dark, but approved for kids. I think that's a perfect way to put it. Thank you so much, Trace Baker and Z, for your engagement there, and feel free to keep dropping questions here. So we're kind of coming up to the end here, but again, feel free to keep dropping them in. Eli was saying, we were talking before about noir market synergy here, film noir market synergy. Eli was saying again, I kind of said this. We get new games, new comics, new movies. I mean, dude, just think about like the games that could come out of this. You could do a Prohibition era Batman swinging in on a bunch of like, see, want to get those booze and bring these dames over to the bar. Like, dude, Batman could be breaking down like 30s era whorehouses and fucking distilleries. Oh, bring it. Actually, as you guys know, I'm such a hoe for history, and that would just be. Interestingly, I'm obsessed with Beyond, but that's because I'm obsessed with history. So I love the future, the idea of the future. My other fascination with Batman is the early days, the Detective 27 and shit. It's a weird bookend fascination that I have with the character, but like, I think Beyond also honored a lot of what, again, Detective Noir, in that case, though, tech noir. Yeah. So state-of-the-art animation techniques. This is another thing from the press release. I'm a little mixed on this. At first, I was like, yes, state-of-the-art. You hear the word state-of-the-art, and you're like, yeah, awesome. But like, shout out to Watchtower Database once again here on YouTube. And it did hit me too as I was listening to it. It's like, James is hoping that it's not too much of a modernization, like to follow everything, for example, that some of the DCAMs have been doing, the DC animated movies, where you have like obviously 3D animation. Specifically with the vehicles, for whatever reason, I always bitch about this on our DC animated movie show, that the newer DCAMs like kind of started around with the late 2000s DCAMs, and then it's continued for the most part, with a few exceptions. And I hope that's not part of the state-of-the-art animation. Is more of that shit. I hope that if Bruce Timm is involved, not shit, it's not garbage, but I think those movies have to serve a budget. They have to put out a lot of them. They're almost like animated series, and you have like 4 of them a year at this point. I understand you have your limitations. I don't expect a ton more from the DCAMs. I do expect more from this show. I'm going to be like a bitch about this show. I will be a snob because with JJ Matt Reeves, I know you have an unlimited budget if HBO Max is involved. And then Bruce Timm, no one, and where, again, the HBO Max thing also means there's no mandate of like, we need 22 of these and they need to be approved for kids. All the shit we just talked about with the S&P and ratings and what it's approved for and what it's not. It's not, none of that is going to be considered to the degree it was before. This isn't going to be cookie cutter conveyor belt Batman animation. So I expect the highest of levels there. Because, here's the question. Do we really want 2021 state-of-the-art animation? Like, especially with how good TNBA Beyond got with their animation. Batman the Animated Series, the original BTAS, I know pre-redesign, pre-revamp, whatever you want to call it, pre-new adventures, it was a different style. But like quality-wise, I'm sorry, they just weren't where they were because they weren't getting the budgets yet. The team hadn't been working together as long. They hadn't found animation companies that were as good. So even if you prefer the style, you also kind of do have to admit, production-wise, TNBA and Beyond were better productions. Now, you could also say that just animation quality style is all I'm saying. You could also say that leading up to 2000 with the premiere of Egg Baby, and then forward, you're getting the digital animation being sprinkled in, at least in terms of the tools that they were using, bring about that animation. But still, the style, like with computers, I could not barely tell the difference, but like it looks so damn. I mean, you could definitely tell early Beyond. You could tell they were painted and stuff like that. And then Egg Baby forward, it improves. But the point is in the style, like you didn't see any of those like obviously 3D animated vehicles, none of those issues that we're seeing now with DCAMs. So I hope that it's state-of-the-art means we're now able to produce these cartoons the same way we did 21 years ago. And not to say that it has to look the same or we have to use the same tools. I don't want any of those incongruities visually that I see in some of the DCAMs. So what I want from this project, and we'll wrap with this. Eli asked me this. I thought this was a great question. Trace Baker here. Since it's going to be on Cartoon Network, could it be on Hulu too, since they have Cartoon Network stuff? That's a great question. That's a great question, Trace Baker. I don't know. Yeah, I mean, Cartoon Network and HBO, of course, all fall under Warner Media. I don't know where exactly. I believe at this point Hulu is owned by Disney. I would say that would have been a possibility pre-sale of when Disney bought the entire world of Fox and whatever the hell else, buying all of Fox and I think Hulu along with it. So, and the reason I say that is because Animaniacs, for example, is a Hulu exclusive, even though it's a Disney company technically now. That show was originally sold to Hulu. Don't quote me on this, but I'm assuming it was originally sold to Hulu years ago when it was first produced. I know for a fact that show was made 2-3 years ago, as animation usually is. So like, I think that whatever WB / Cartoon Network stuff would have gone on Hulu is no longer going to be. It would have already had to have been produced in the past. Any future productions, I doubt that. That is an awesome question. Yeah, I mean, in this world of streaming and companies, 2-3 companies owning all of entertainment, these are all great questions. So what I want from this project, and then we'll close with this. I want very similar to the approach of Batman the Animated Series and Batman Beyond. Now, when I say that, I mean, I want a hybrid of that with kind of modern television, meaning I would love individual episodic stories that can function as their own. You know, Batman beats the shit out of some mugger in the street. He might not even have to be a rogue in this one episode. You know, the guy serves his time, but then Batman helps him get a job when he gets out of jail, and other Batman stuff happens in between, whatever it is. Those little stories that we would get in the animated series that had nothing to do with a greater continuity of this entire DCAU. It didn't serve any kind of greater story, but it fit within, or it just was there, right? And it could fit within that greater DCAU kind of, what the hell do I want to say, arc, right? So I would like them, though, to do now with modern storytelling. I don't need like a binge-worthy, you know, season, but I would like a season arc. I think that would be really interesting to get, especially with these filmmakers involved, and just the way that, you know, a lot of people always say, you know, where was the finale of Batman Beyond? Where was the finale of Batman the Animated Series? I mean, back then they didn't do finales. Like, you have to put yourself in the time frame. I know a lot of people are younger now, so they don't. There's no way they would understand that. So just to explain, it's like that wasn't. There's multiple quotes from Bruce Timm when people ask them that, like, dude, no one was making TV with finales back. I mean, you would do finales, but it wasn't. TV was just a different medium. It wasn't this, like, you know, again, super long serialized storytelling arcs were expected out of every season of every TV show you ever get, where writers' rooms and all that shit. Now we are in that world. But I think because I think Batman in particular, not just because it's where he comes from, but the character just works perfectly with little stories, right? So it's like a pulp one-shot comic of Batman, one story, but I think it would be cool if that one story could also serve a longer series arc, 10, 12 episodes, whatever it is. And I want half-hour, like, short film noir films that could serve an arc. I also don't need, like, maybe a setup, an openness for a season 2, kind of the Joker card at the end of Begins. It might have a sequel, it might not. We know exactly where that would go, but yet we don't, type thing. That would be cool, but I don't need a big plan for something else. I think because I think that will ensure the quality better if they keep it. It'll ensure the potency of the quality if they kind of treat it as one season. Then yeah, if it works, yeah, if it's popular, which I can't imagine it not be, sure, open it up for a second season. But don't Game of Thrones this shit. So many people just expect that. Like, there were so many disappointed fans from the first season of Mandalorian. It's like, look, I like what you like. I'm not going to say you can't like Mandalorian, but give it a little more credit insofar as, like, I'm sorry, the criticism just doesn't hold up for me that it has to be dropped, you know, it all had to have been dropped and be bingeable, and these, you know, kind of individual 70s, 80s style sci-fi episodes don't work for me. I want a Netflix / you know, Game of Thrones approach to Mandalorian. It's like, why does everything have to be, it's a space cowboy with a baby alien? Like, that's got to be fucking Game of Thrones? Like, reel it in a little bit. That's how old sci-fi TV was, but it did serve a greater arc. And I'm not just using Mandalorian as an example because I loved Mandalorian. I just think that that's where we are TV-wise, and I'm so excited for that because I did get a bit of, like, binge fatigue. I was so excited with Mandalorian. I'm like, oh, they're dropping the shit every week. That's how TV used to be, and HBO does that too. So it's like, I love that that's happening. I really hope they do the same thing with this. If not Saturday morning, like, how badass would that be if they did this Saturday? Actually, that's what I want. Saturday morning. That's what I want. So yeah, that is what I want from this. I also think you could play around with little things of like, you know, the McGinnises are here, and you don't know where that's going to go, and it might not go anywhere. But just drop in names like that, even if it's not DCAU tie-in. Drop in names like that, because why the fuck not? How amazing would that be? If they're like, you know, oh, this guy Warren McGinnis started working for us at, you know, Wayne Labs or whatever. Oh my God, Wayne Tech. Bring and beyond wherever. That's my motto. So that's what I want from that project, man. So closing thoughts, I am crazy excited. You know, again, I think for the history of the character, this might be the best thing. If it is what they're saying it is, sounds hyperbolic, the best thing to happen to the character historically since Batman the Animated Series. I'm excited for the possibility and or not possibility. Like, I like that this might not be tied into the DCAU. If it is, forget it. Like, we're going to cover the hell out of it. Again, shout out to Watchtower Database. They're going to be covering the hell out of it. And I mean, the fact is that if it is, this is old Bruce 39. I will follow you to hell. Finally, Superman animated series was also ordered. A Superman animated series was also ordered by HBO Max / Cartoon Network. I'm assuming that press release was just same day, both these announcements. My Adventures with Superman. So Eli has agreed to come on the show to talk about that. So please subscribe if you want to hear what we have to say on My Adventures with Superman. It's going to have Jack Quaid from The Boys. He's going to be, and it's a young Superman in his 20s. And they're kind of doing like a trio of, it's all about Jimmy Olsen, Lois and Clark. And that is it for our live update on Batman Caped Crusader. Again, with our niche of Batman animation and Bruce Timm, Eli and I will be covering the hell out of Batman Caped Crusader as news develops. So stay tuned here at the channel for all that. Be sure to check out our most recent vid here on the channel with my reaction to the newest DC animated movie trailer, Batman the Long Halloween Part 2. Looks pretty cool. No Part 1 is not yet released, but the trailer for Part 2 did drop, so we reacted. The reaction was for our DC animated movie show here on the channel, and you can find the audio from that same episode on the podcast of the same name. Again, that's DC animated movie show, and you can and you can subscribe to that show on Apple, Spotify, and wherever you listen to podcasts. And speaking of our DCAM show, stay tuned for our upcoming series here on the channel covering the DC Showcase animated shorts. I was mentioning this before, starting with 2020's Phantom Stranger, also directed by Bruce Timm. Again, very much in the DC animation style. If you haven't seen that, the DCAU animation style, if you haven't seen Phantom Stranger, definitely check it out. I think it was released along with Superman Red Son. So hopefully you'll join us for the Showcase short series. Hope to see you guys there. All right, so again, the audio for this will be on our Above and Batman Beyond podcast. Please subscribe to the pod if you don't already. We're on Apple, Spotify, and SoundCloud. And for the podcast listeners, don't forget about our Above and Batman Beyond YouTube channel, where we spend most of our time these days. So please consider subscribing there as well so you don't miss our vids. If you don't already, please follow us on Instagram. We are at Batman Beyond Media, where you can find plenty of Beyond coverage. And finally, please subscribe to our DC animated movie show here on the channel. Again, I was just telling you all about that. And again, you can find that podcast Apple, Spotify, wherever you listen to podcasts. Justice Society World War II, again, we reviewed that along with the Commandy short recently. So yeah, man, this was awesome. Super excited for Batman Caped Crusader. This has been Benjamin David telling you to go above and Batman Beyond.